Bitch, let's go.
He's Derek.
I also was a young hippie. I also was dating in the 1970s.
She's Romaine.
Bitch, you should have put that tree in the attic a long time ago, but you are being lazy, and now I'm going to hold you accountable.
This is Derek and Romaine.
2.0, bitches!
Derek here, along with Romaine, and joining us in today's episode of the show, one of our favorite leading ladies, actor Charles Busch, is going to be joining us. He is also a writer, and he has his new book out, which we hope you will pick up and enjoy. I've been seeing in social media, it came out in September, and a bunch of people that we like Adam Sank and Frank DeCaro, have been reading the book and really enjoying it. I read the book. It is really good, filled with great stories of Charles Busch's life here in New York City, making plays off Broadway, on Broadway, making movies, and also talking about his life and growing up. It's really wonderful, and I think you'll enjoy the interview with him as well. And be sure to pick up a copy of his book. And you know me, Romaine, I love a classic Hollywood celebrity encounter story. And
I know you do.
A bunch.
Does it? Okay. Well, that's
Yes.
exciting. All right. Well, that's
You
cool.
know, being here in New York, you see celebrities every once in a while just be bopping around.
Yeah. Every once in a while, you sure do.
Every once in a
Sure
while.
do.
It's one of the nice things about being in New York or Los Angeles is that you see celebrities. I mean, unless you're a barista or a waiter. And then sometimes it's not the best experience you ever had.
True.
Not everyone has a good reputation. Not like Derek and Romaine.
I mean, we have an
No.
amazing reputation. Incredible, even. That's our reputation.
Yeah. Although here in New York City, recently, things have really gone to pot.
Yeah.
And literally, the marijuana, it's everywhere now. And, you know, the federal government has been looking at changing the status of marijuana. Who knows? By the time this airs, maybe it will have already happened. But they are trying to change it to a different schedule. They want to take it down to Schedule 3, which will make it easier for scientists to study the positive or negative effects of marijuana and THC and CBD, all that kind of stuff, and also make it easier for states that have legalized marijuana to make it a little less perilous legally for them. And so there is that. We might actually see some movement on the federal level to match what's happening in the various states, including our own.
Wow, that's awesome, actually. I like that. Because, lots of people have been punished because of the marijuana that, maybe shouldn't have been.
Well, I mean, they've already tried to, roll back the sentences of nonviolent drug offenders, people who were arrested and went to prison for long sentences for having pot.
Right.
And so they have been trying to unwind some of that. And in New York State, they have given priority to the people to get licenses to open dispensaries in New York of people who had been previously arrested for having pot, but being nonviolent offenders. And so, I mean, I guess, sorry we put you in jail. Here, you can now run a small business in New York State.
Right.
But out in California, they have been looking at changing their laws because they have dispensaries there in California. And it started as a medical marijuana thing.
Right.
And but even selling the pot, you could only, you couldn't sell certain other things at a dispensary. And now they would like to open them up to serve fresh food also.
Oh.
Which I imagine would mean that, in the future, you'll be able to go out to dinner and then have a space cake for dessert
Oh,
in your favorite restaurant.
well, wouldn't that be nice
I mean, I guess.
if you're
I mean,
into
people-
those kind of things?
Well, people are already pretty high out in California all the time from the sunshine.
I mean, and not just in California, let's be honest. There's a lot of places now that are pretty high all the time.
well, Colorado.
Whoa. I don't think anyone in Colorado is sober.
But were they really before? I mean, you
I
lived there.
mean, yes. I definitely think it is the use of marijuana in Colorado once it became legal skyrocketed in Colorado. People I know that never really used it now use it pretty regularly.
Well, I know you have this fantasy of buying your old coffee house in Denver again. So would you run it as like a coffee house slash space cakes kind of a place like they have in Amsterdam?
I mean, I guess you could, because there really are two different crowds that if you run your coffee shop correctly. There are two different crowds. There's your morning crowd, right? The crowd that comes in because they need their morning coffee. And then there's your evening crowd, which is your crowd is getting coffee because they're going to go out and have a good time that night. And so you want to make sure that they're awake and ready to go. So you could feasibly market the space cake to that evening crowd. I don't know that I would market it to the morning crowd, but definitely to the evening crowd. You could do that. And that could be fun, I suppose. I don't know.
Wait.
I don't know enough about the world of marijuana because I am a newbie to that world, as we have discussed on our show regularly. Like, I've tried edibles now and again. It's not like I'm doing them all the time, but if I'm having like a fun night with my friends, I might have an edible just to, because I don't drink a lot, so it kind of helps bring up the funness of an evening like that. But yeah, I'm just not. I don't know enough about it. I'm not educated enough about the ins and the outs of the world of marijuana, I think, to do something like that. I could learn though.
You could, but that would require time and reading.
Who's got time? I got no time.
Here's the thing: when it comes to pot, most people would prefer to just be a consumer,
Right.
than a researcher or a business person.
Although I have friends in this industry who are fascinated by it.
Well, sure. I think if you are interested in the trade, I mean,
Right.
you can get into the trade, and it certainly has been a financial
Sure.
the boom for Colorado.
Yep.
It has turned into real big business there economically, and in California, I think it just took something that was happening anyway and moved it out into the open.
Right.
And same thing in New York. It just, people were smoking pot in New York before, even on Sex and the City. And, not just because somebody broke up with you on a Post-it, but,
Right.
Just in general.
Mm-hmm. Broke up with you on a Post-it. I don't use my Post-its in that way, Derek.
I know you don't. But on the subject of the sort of things that can be addictive,
Yeah.
Romaine has been soda sober
I have.
for quite some time now.
Almost, it'll be, we're going on to 3 years. Almost 3 years I've been soda
Yeah.
sober. Yeah.
And how do you feel about it?
I feel like I made a good choice, and I feel like, I definitely understand addiction better, having gone through this journey of becoming soda sober, because my addiction to soda is, I think, more mental than physical, because I still mentally want a soda all the time. Physically, I don't really crave them the way that I used to feel like I needed to have a soda right then and there. There are definitely times when I physically crave it, but it's more mental, I think. Like, I miss the ritual of drinking a soda, the cracking of the can, the pouring over the ice, the sounds, the first sip. I miss all of those qualities about it, but that's the addiction. That is not, I don't actually miss soda itself, if that makes sense.
For people overcoming addiction, the ritual parts of it are the hardest thing to overcome. Because that's, my grandmother was a lifelong smoker. And that was a real issue for her because she had, the points in her day where she would light up.
Yeah.
And that was the hardest part, is that she was so embedded in the routine of it that that was the part that was hard to shake. And I think a lot of people who have these kinds of addictions is that it is very situational, like where the trigger is. Like, oh, I always light up when I get in the car, or I always light up, after dinner, or I always have a drink,
Right.
in this setting or that setting, and it is difficult to do that. But it's part of why I think that changing other behaviors around that can be really beneficial. Because if you're changing other parts of your routine, doing new activities, that kind of thing that did not involve your past addiction, whether it's something like smoking or soda or almost anything else, then I think that can be helpful. But, the singer Post Malone, he also quit soda and lost 60 pounds.
I'm not surprised, because I remember we used to talk about the calories that you consume when you're drinking things like soda and the sugar content. And, we all know that high fructose corn syrup is basically the fucking devil. And it's just, that's all soda is. So it's so bad for your body. And you don't even realize how bad it is until you get out from under the syrupy blob that you've become while drinking soda. Because if you're a heavy soda drinker, you are just consuming so many calories. And then on top of that, you're shooting your sugar up, the sugar levels up and down all day long, which definitely can lead to things like diabetes and things like that. So giving up a habit of that nature is definitely going to result in weight loss. I lost a lot of weight when I gave up soda, which I was happy to lose a few lbs that way. But I just think you got to just create healthier alternatives, and you just are going to physically feel so much better. I remember I used to walk around and my whole body all day long just felt heavy, just like weighted down. And a lot of it was the sugar, just like, bleh. Like it felt like you were like crawling through corn syrup all day long. And now, because I don't drink soda anymore, I no longer feel like that. My body feels lighter. My mind feels lighter. Everything just feels better, clearer in a way than it did before. A lot clearer, a lot better. Yeah.
It's just better for you. The empty calories of beverages, because it isn't just that. These calorie heavy coffee drinks.
Oh yeah,
at various places, you don't think about the caloric intake of one of those
what your
things,
Starbucks is, what your Frappuccino has in it. There are like Frappuccino drinks that have so many, like a day's worth of calories in a single drink.
God bless it. I love it.
That's crazy, but it's absolutely true. And even when I gave up soda, I had to be very conscientious of like how many drinks exactly like that I would let myself consume. I typically drink water throughout the day. Now, sometimes I'll flavor my water with like some Mio or something like that, which uses like an artificial sweetener. But even that is so much better for you than, soda or drinking multiple Starbucks drinks a day or things like that. Like, yeah, you really have to think about shit like that.
For me, the biggest change around this is being around other people who have changed it. Like with Romaine giving up soda, I also don't drink soda when I am around Romaine.
Which is very thoughtful. Thank you.
Yeah, really at this point, because I don't have any soda in the house, because my feeling about junk is if you don't buy it and it's not in your house, you won't consume it.
Yep.
So I don't buy a lot of snacky things at the grocery store, even though I'll go down there and I'll think, oh, sure, I could just have a bag of potato chips at the house.
Okay.
But I know I will eat that entire bag in one sitting.
See,
And
and
if I
I
don't
make
have
better
it-
choices. Like I try to make,
Yeah.
I don't get the potato chips that I might love, but I'll get like something that is a little bit healthier. I'll try to find a healthier option for my snack.
Well, that's just the sadness, frankly.
know.
But so I don't buy soda, so I don't really have soda at the house.
Right.
And then when we're out on our cruises and doing things or whatever, I'm not having soda. And then really the only time now that I'll have a soda, and it's not even every time, but it's at the movies. Because again, this is the habit thing, right?
I no
'Cause
longer drink soda at the movies. I drink a water. And that
Yeah,
was a
I
habit
do-
I had to break because fast food, movies, places like that where you usually get a soda,
Yeah,
those are the hardest ones to break.
right.
But you get soda when you go to the movies still.
Sometimes.
Interesting.
Sometimes I get water.
Sometimes
But
I'll get an icy.
I'll be honest. When I'm so cheap
Yeah.
that from a value standpoint, I just think if I'm going to pay whatever it is for this thing, because they charge you, whatever, $4 for a bottle of water,
Right.
and it's outrageous. Because I'm just like,
sure
this is just literally water.
Mm-hmm.
And at least with a soda, I feel like, well, there's some value to it. It is a concoction, even though it is mostly water and sugar.
Right.
But like, in my head, so much of this stuff is psychological. In my head, I think, well, if I'm paying the same amount for sort of twice as much soda as water, I might as well get the soda, which is insane because that's the whole thing. This is why they include the soda with your fast food meal or at the movies, because the profit margin is so high, but then you feel like, oh, I'm getting a lot for my money, but you're really not. But it frequently is like a psychological thing for me of it is a crime that you're charging me this much for water.
Right.
But it is a healthier option. And most of the time I do get water. If we go to if we go to the Alamo Draft House where they have different drink options, I'll get the unsweetened iced tea or something.
Right.
I'll get something, not water, but not soda in that kind of a situation. But in my regular old movie theater, my option is water, soda, or a glass of white wine.
Oh,
And I'm not going to drink a glass of white wine. That's ridiculous.
no.
Well, I don't like wine or beer. So, no.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not doing that.
All right.
But I do try to not do the soda thing. And
Well, I think it's a good idea because soda. I do feel like soda is poison. I think it is. I just think it's so toxic for your body. And I say that as someone who used to live to drink soda. I'm sure I took years off my life drinking soda.
good for you.
No, it's horrible. And I work really hard to make sure Romy doesn't drink a lot of soda because I think
Right.
it's so bad. And so like we don't have soda in our house ever. I unless I'm having like a party and I'll get some soda for like people coming to a party, but otherwise I just keep it out of my house.
That's the way it's got to be.
Yeah.
If it's bad, you just don't buy it, and then you won't have it in the house, and then you won't like fall into the craving of it, and then now here it is.
Exactly. So yeah, I say if you can stay away from soda, do it.
But speaking of cravings, you know how people have become obsessed with Ozempic and
Yeah.
these other sort of weight loss drugs. Well, apparently, this happens sometimes where they will have some kind of new blockbuster drug that will come out, and as millions of people start using it, because they do safety testing and everything, but it's in a
Right.
smaller number of people, and they're really just looking for efficacy and
Yeah.
negative side effects. But as time goes on, you sometimes will see other benefits and everything. This was the thing with Viagra, is initially it was developed for something else, hair growth. I can't even remember what it was originally developed for, but then they saw that it wasn't really effective at what they had developed it for, but it was giving people hard-on. So they were like, well, we've got a new product here. So sometimes, you get different benefits from things, but apparently the more that people are using these drugs, they're discovering that sort of what the drug is doing for people has different benefits. So in this case, they also believe that it might be beneficial in curbing people's cravings for alcohol.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. So Ozempic and other drugs like it might end up being beneficial for people who are trying to get sober.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. But it's not exactly clear why, but it may have something to do with just our overall cravings because,
Right.
Alcohol is ultimately caloric, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so just like with soda and other like food addictions is that our body is craving, this caloric, like what the infusion of calories do into our body, and our bodies are starting to process all these calories and everything and what's happening.
Right.
So it could be related that that is what it's doing, but it might also just in general be dealing with the sort of pleasure center parts of what makes food and soda and alcohol addicting for people. That if it's sort of blocking that need for it, that craving part of it, then it will curb people eating, drinking soda, and drinking alcohol.
Wow. That's a very interesting side effect, but I think it's great. I mean, if it could help people, shit.
Well, this
But
is...
are the people who need it going to be able to get it because of all these other bitches being on it? That's my question.
Well, there have been shortages just because so many people have started using it, and I don't think the industry was ready for how many people were going to start using it, and more people, they can manufacture more of it, and then there will be fewer shortages over time because they'll be doing it more. I worry about people being too focused on, well, if you just take a pill, it will solve all your problems.
Right.
Because
But I mean, this is kind of what happened with weight loss surgery too, right? Everyone's like, "Ooh, I'm going to get skinny. I'm going to have weight loss surgery." So they get the surgery, they lose a bunch of weight, and then they don't actually change any of their habits, and then they gain it all back.
Yeah. But there are people who have serious addictions who try to overcome them,
Absolutely.
and they are just not able to do so. So in those kinds of circumstances, I think it's beneficial to have these kinds of options that
Right.
if people have tried everything else and they really need it to overcome it, and in a lot of cases, that is life and death.
Yeah.
Then, I'm all for it. What we have seen is a lot of sort of celebrities who need to lose 10 pounds before the Oscars, which is not quite the same thing.
No, it is not the same thing at all.
Or, the gays try to get ready for bathing suit season. This is where the shortages happen. People who really, really don't need it
right.
for anything other than a vanity reason, but who are taking it. Because we don't know what the longer-term effects of these kinds of things will be.
Right.
Like what other potential side effects to your body. And it's one thing if it is, you're talking about the difference between like a severe alcohol addiction, right?
Yep.
Where you are destroying your body and you could potentially overdose or have other chronic health problems later on that will kill you, destroying your liver and, kidneys or other things, right?
Yeah.
So in those kinds of cases, like, yes, there may be longer-term side effects of using this drug, but there are longer-term side effects of not being able to overcome your alcohol addiction. So it may be worthwhile to trade one, where we know what the long-term effects are for something where it's less obvious what the long-term effects will be.
Right.
But I think that this is where sort of casual use of these kinds of things is problematic. Because we also don't know, because this can happen sometimes, is that, you don't know what just doing a drug using the drug to overcome these cravings or whatever, what the longer term effects will be. And what we've seen in terms of just your own body, like we have seen with dieting, that people will diet, have some kind of restrictive diet where they'll cut out a part of their diet to lose weight. And then they lose the weight. And then when they go back to their regular diet, they gain all that weight back and then more.
Yeah.
Because there's a negative effect to what they've done to their body in that kind of severe dieting thing. So I worry about that, of if you're using it casually to overcome cravings to lose 10 pounds, when you stop doing the drug later on, are you just going to gain 15 pounds?
Nobody wants that.
No, that's a very negative consequence.
Yeah.
But I do hope that for these kinds of things, for the people who have serious cravings that they are unable to overcome, for things like alcohol, where they have a serious problem, and that this could be something that could be beneficial for them, I am glad for that.
Yeah.
I think, I'm not a doctor, what do I know? But I feel like this is last resort material, with those kinds of things. If you really have tried everything, you've really struggled, and you and your doctor think this might be something that could be beneficial to try, then it's probably worth a try. But it is interesting, the more, as science advances on any number of fronts, we discover all sorts of things, and it makes me it does make me hopeful for the future. I don't want to get too bummer about it, but there are positive impacts that can happen from these kinds of things. So I'm optimistic about the future, not just focused on the past.
Very good, Derek. Very good. Thank you. I'm so glad.
Yes. But speaking of focusing on the past, Charles Busch has tons of stories from his long and storied career on Broadway and in Hollywood. And you're going to love our chat with him coming up next here on Derek and Romaine.
More Derek and Romaine next.
America's favorite travel show is back for 2024, and it's bigger and better than ever, Derek. Entering its 20th year, it's the only travel show series in the country where you have an opportunity to find, plan, and book your next trip and talk directly to travel experts. It's the Travel and Adventure Show.
And it is the only travel show where you will see Derek and Romaine in 2024. We are going to be at the New York City Travel and Adventure Show on January 27th and 28th at the Jacob Javits Center, and in Washington, D.C., our first trip as Derek and Romaine to D.C. since a long time.
Yeah.
So we hope everybody in the D.C. area comes out to see us. Mark your calendar, February 24th and 25th. We'll be at the Washington Convention Center there, and you can go to travelshows.com to get tickets and upcoming dates in cities all across the country. They will also be in cities that are big with our listeners. We know we have a lot of listeners in Phoenix and in Atlanta and in Dallas from the many times we've been there in the past, and there are travel and adventure shows there for you as well.
Yeah, and there are 4 of these shows that have a LGBTQ pavilion that's set up. It's in L.A., D.C., New York, and Chicago. And these pavilions are great because they're specifically set up to find safe and fun travel partners who are providing new and exciting travel options that are specifically geared and designed for the LGBT community. And the other great thing about these shows is that you have access to the educational content right there on the show floor, because they have 3 different stages that will offer you everything from packing tips to how to use rewards to destination-specific presentations and entertainment. You're going to walk away from each of the travel and adventure shows with knowledge that you cannot find anywhere else. So, if you're ready to book the vacation of a lifetime or just get advice from top travel experts in the world, then you need to book your ticket to the Travel and Adventure Show today. Visit travelshows.com for a full list of cities and shows near you.
And we will see you there.
Yes, we will.
DNR 2.0.
Derek here, along with Romaine, and joining us today's leading lady is male actress and writer Charles Busch. His new book is Leading Lady, a memoir of a most unusual boy. It is available now everywhere fine books are sold, and you can find him on the web at charlesbusch.com. That is Busch, B-U-S-C-H. charlesbusch.com. He is also Chaz Busch with an S on Instagram and charlesbusch.page on Facebook. Charles, I feel like you have faced the same problem we do in social media. By the time we got where we needed to be, our options were limited.
I don't know. This modern world quite defeats me, but I'm trying to be resilient.
You're doing your best.
That's all I can do.
You have this new memoir out, and you, though, have been a writer for a very long time, writing stage shows and movies. So how is writing a memoir different than the writing that you have done in the past?
Exceedingly painful. Now it was a real challenge. I've been working on this book for 14 years.
That's a long time.
14 years.
Oh.
And I knew I had a good story to tell because I've always kind of lived my life with one eye toward immortality, and so any situation I'm in, I'm kind of editing it into narrative while I'm living it. So I knew ultimately someday I was going to write everything down, and Facebook, frankly, has been a big help, for all of its sinister connotations. Being able to share these stories with a really great group of Facebook friends who are remarkably unsnarky, it really helped me shape this book. But I tried every which way to write it, and my first attempt was many years ago. I had one of these newfangled sort of tiny little recorders that, when you'd speak into it, then you could plug it into your computer and it would immediately transcribe it. But I tried to do that with my friend Julie Halston, who's been, in so many of my plays. She's kind of my muse. And anyway, when I tried to play it back with her Comac, Long Island, New York accent and my very affected sort of great lady talking, it came out total gibberish. It looked like it was in Bulgarian. And so I had to finally just sit down and just write the damn thing. And it's been a fascinating experience. It really has.
Did you find it therapeutic to write it?
Mm-hmm. Yes. It was interesting in a way, probably the first big event of my life was that my mother died when I was 7 years old, and it really has kind of informed the rest of my life in some ways. And my older sister and I, who were so extremely close, so close, we never discussed that day with each other until finally, for this book, I wanted to ask her, where was she exactly, during that day, and it was very emotional for the two of us, and revelatory, but then I don't know, some of it you just have to kind of rely on just your own distorted memories. I'm sure a number of people will read my book who are in my life and think, oh, wait a minute, that's not exactly the way it happened, but it's the way I remembered it. And I think it's probably better.
I think because I have faced this myself. When you remember back to things, you're remembering sort of the story of it, which is not always sort of the minute by minute play of what happened. But the reality is the end result is the same. Like, this is where you are emotionally. This is where these other people you've interacted with are emotionally. This is your takeaway. So in a way, it's a bit more important than sort of a diary entry, right?
I think so. And the terrible thing is that after the whole book was finished, I think it was at the printers, basically, I decided to clean out some forbidden drawer here, and that I never open up except to somehow squeeze out some envelopes, and I found 8 diaries that I had kept, just when I was right out of college and about to try to begin a career. And I thought, oh my God, if I open them up, I'll be so upset that I didn't include something or got things wrong from the book. So I just put them right back in the drawer and didn't. I'm afraid to open them. I think it's for the best.
Well, if the book is a big hit, you now have your sequel, waiting in a drawer.
The diaries, yes.
And it'll only take another 14 years. You'll be 26 years old by then.
Yes. Well, also, I have a feeling, I wasn't terribly reflective back in those days. I was just so, it was like the beginning of Funny Girl. I was just, why not me? Why can't I be up there on that stage? And I have a feeling that if I did look at those diaries, they'd be more like date books about, who did I go to bed with, and have to, bring clothes to laundromat, that sort of thing.
Yeah, but keeping track of who you had sex with, is that such a bad thing? I don't think so.
I remember a lot.
I'm sure you do.
I know. As a matter of fact, I get sort of annoyed when I talk to people who, had sex with like a famous person or something, and then they suddenly they can't remember like dick size and stuff like that. Really?
Yeah, exactly. They remember.
Yeah, and I that really annoys me. I actually had a friend of it. I want to say there was a very elderly actress that I know, and she wrote a memoir and where she talked about how she lost her virginity with Marlon Brando when she was like 18 or something, and she showed me like a rough draft of this book, and it just said, and then he carried me into the bedroom. The next morning, I said, wait a minute. I said, you got to tell us more about sex with Brando and at the height of his beauty, please. And she said, I just don't remember. I said, well, then I will tell you my fantasy of having sex with him, and you put that in the book.
Well, and, if you had been in New York in 1949, that might have been in the offing, from what I hear. It was.
It might have been.
I don't know how he did 8 shows a week. He was sleeping with so many people.
Men and women, evidently.
Yes, that's real stamina,
I tell you, I use that excuse 8 a week more and more. I was rather neglectful uncle to my nephew who grew up in Manhattan here, and we didn't really become close until he was an adult. And but my excuse is always, I was doing 8 a week. That's my excuse for everything in life. Yeah.
But in your memoir, Leading Lady, you do talk about your Aunt Lil, who really helped to take care of you after your mother died, and really was a dominant force in your life for a long time. So did you feel some responsibility toward your nephew to be a similar New York personality?
I was doing 8 a week. My aunt wasn't doing 8 shows a week. No, really, she was the most influential person in my life, and in a sense, she's the leading lady of the title in many ways. Look, I was very nice. I think, I'm embarrassed to admit this, but I think when I figured out when he was about 7 that he was clearly straight, and I think it's when I asked him who Peter Pan's fairy tale friend was, and he said, Tinkleberry?
No.
Tinkleberry.
Something sort of died in me at that moment. And yes. And then I even tried a number of years later, the first time I did the play Anti-Mame for a one-night big kind of all-star Actors Fund benefit on Broadway. It was one of the great nights of my life, and just all these people were in, and I had my nephew, who I guess was maybe 11 at the time. He played my nephew, Patrick, and he was marvelous. But at one point he said to me about the cast, Uncle Charles, are like all these people famous? And I said, well, let's put it this way. They all were a lot happier in 1966. So, and that was sort of the truth.
That's amazing.
I had a similar sort of Auntie Mame person in my life too, a glamorous New Yorker, my great aunt Caroline, and so I identified with quite a bit of that with your book because Lil married a rich guy, and suddenly was able to be this glamorous New Yorker, and Caroline. In describing her second marriage, said her hands never touched luggage, which is the kind of thing you don't forget as a young gay boy growing up. Of like, that's the dream.
Yeah.
Yeah. My aunt had wonderful statements. I remember when I was her great audience. I spent so much time just from childhood on, just alone with her, and just listening. And at one point she said, "You can tell everything you need to know about a woman by how she applies her lipstick." Oh, note to self, and it's very true. And I sometimes when I tend to share dressing rooms with the women, and I always have, and no actress has ever seemed to find that a problem. But anyway, so I've always sort of noticed while all the other girls were putting on their lipstick, well, that's interesting. Oh, look at that. This, and it's very true.
Huh. Well, and you've played so many female characters. So is this something that for you, when you are working on these characters, creating these characters, is this one of the places that you go to form that connection?
How my character would put on lipstick?
Well, yes. Because doesn't that make a difference?
Well, it would certainly be a very method, actor studio approach. I guess I've never really thought about it that way. But from now on, I will, because I am actually returning to the stage this winter after several year absence. Yeah, so I have a new play that I wrote that I'm going to be in that we're doing first. This is like the first gig. Because we try it out. We're trying it out at a marvelous theater in New Jersey called the George Street Playhouse. And then, with 1 week off for good behavior, we then move it to Primary Stages Theater here in Manhattan. It's called Ibsen's Ghost, and an irresponsible biographical fantasy. So I have to figure out. I'm still trying to figure out what you call the elevator pitch, to make it sound funny, because it sounds really depressing. I play Ibsen's widow the week after his death. You're laughing, Romaine?
I'm hysterically laughing. I am. No, so you're a widow, and this is funny?
Well, all sorts of shenanigans and hijinks occur within 2 acts. Yes, it will be funny. And I hope, with all the stuff I write, I like a roller coaster of tone.
Sure.
So I like getting big laughs, and then immediately I like to get you weeping, and then before I get a little pretentious, I get you another laugh. So I like that as an audience member and as a theater maker or now memoirist, because my book is back to my book is
casual.
They're very short chapters. Most of them are maybe 2 to 3 pages. I think it's a perfect book to sit on the toilet and read, and you won't get hemorrhoids.
Now, I wish more authors wrote like that, because I often do most of my reading on the toilet.
I know, and and if it's a long chapter, it could be a problem.
Yes.
So not my book.
I did enjoy these short chapters. I also liked how you jumped back and forth between the sort of your personal story, your family history, that part of your story, and then other sort of adventures that you had in your career and also in your interactions with a variety of celebrities over the years. So was that a conscious structural choice for you in sort of mixing up the story that way?
Yeah, very good question. Yes, I originally I thought that I wanted to be that structure. Because I get so restless when I read books, autobiographies or biographies where it's first you talk all about their their great grandparents and the grandparents' lives and their parents and then their childhood and when do we get to the sexy part or the showbiz stuff. So I at one point I did think it was just going to be all just kind of various anecdotes and then, I don't know, I got insecure, in year 7. I thought maybe it should be just a regular linear biography, chapter 1, I am born. But then I ultimately went back to a version of the original thing. I start with a story about my friendship with Joan Rivers, but then I go back to kind of the beginning of my childhood, but then I kind of there is logic to the book, and for the most part, there is kind of a chronological sequence of childhood to teenage to beginning my career. But then I go off on tangents. Like, for instance, I talk early in the book about my aunt taking me to Broadway shows when I was a kid, and I'd say that she took me to see Carol Channing and Hello Dolly, which then reminds me of the time many years later I shared the dressing room with Carol Channing and watched her put on her false eyelashes. So it's so I kind of go off on tangents, and I hope it's not frustrating, but illuminating.
It is really fun. And of course, for me, because like you, I share a love of the classic movie stars that you frequently have homages to in your work. But you also were able to meet many of them over the years. And and because recently on our show, we've been talking a lot about Kim Novak because... Well, I watched The Mirror Cracked, and I have a genealogy hobby, and I thought, she's a good bohemian girl, as my grandmother used to say, so maybe I should see how closely related we are, and it turns out pretty closely related by marriage. My grandmother's favorite aunt was married to her great-uncle, so...
you were able to find that? How do you find that out?
I'm really good at genealogy.
He's insane when it comes to genealogy.
Yeah.
Like he's crazy. He's a weirdo. I say
I'd like
with
to
love.
call it a hobby, but
It's more of an obsession.
But it's psychotic. So yeah.
Well, I don't know. I think if you did me, you'd still just end up with some baker and his wife, and I don't know, some shtetl somewhere.
Believe me, I got plenty of that too.
Wouldn't find Kim Novak.
But you had an encounter with Kim Novak yourself.
Yeah. She was fascinating. Yes. No. I've over the years done a number of things with Turner Classic Movies, and for their 20th anniversary on the air a number of years ago, they asked about 20 celebrities of different stripes who also were known to do visual art to create an original piece of artwork on a movie theme for this anniversary. And so it was a wild group of people assembled, from Manola Blahnik to Jane Seymour and Kim Novak, me. I kept saying I was the only person on that list I'd never heard of, but it was very exciting. So because I draw, I went to art school and all that. So anyway, and she's a fine visual artist. So when I got to L.A., really the only celebrities who showed up for this event were just Jane Seymour, Kim Novak, and me. And then TCM had an exhibit at the Hollywood Roosevelt Hotel of all of our artwork, and they gave us this little preview before the public would come in. And so I got there, and Kim Novak arrived, and she was. I guess way up in her 70s, but still very beautiful and charismatic, and we just bonded in this strange, intense way in that room. I was going through kind of a depressed period, and she had just done an interview on TCM with Robert Osborne, where she'd been very, very vulnerable and revealing the different difficult episodes of her life. And so I mentioned how much that meant to me, to her, and she just kind of latched on to me, and it was this very emotional kind of conversation we had in the middle of this cocktail party, and then we went into the room to see the exhibit, and they had little pin spots on each of our paintings, and the one on hers was slightly off focus. So I said, "Oh, Kim, I think they need to refocus your light." And she, very, very, nicely asked somebody at TCM there to fix it, and they were immediately on the ladder. And then she she suddenly turned real hard, and she said, "I took a lot of shit from Columbia. I'm not taking any more shit today." I thought, whoa! But then immediately she went right back into this kind of cosmic, otherworldly tone, and talking to me about, my radiance and our journeys and everything. And then she asked me what I was doing later in the evening, and I explained that I was they were sending me across the street to Grauman's Chinese Theater to introduce a screening of Whatever Happened to Baby Jane. And I said to her I thought that it was Robert Aldrich's best film as a director. And suddenly her face turned really kind of hard, and she said, "Bob Aldrich directed me in The Legend of Lila Claire. He wanted me to use a German accent. I wouldn't do it. And he dubbed me. I could have done it." And I was, wow, and she kept flipping back and forth. And suddenly she'd go right back to her kind of cosmic, ethereal self. And, of course, I was just dazzled by the whole thing. And instantly in love. And the evening kind of went on from there, and she was just fascinating. And then for a while there, we were emailing back and forth, and I just couldn't believe that I was emailing with Kim Novak. But I was very curious that she, in her paintings, she's able to mix. She does multimedia and mixes pastels, which is chalk, with watercolor, and I couldn't figure out what sort of surface, what kind of paper do you use that could accommodate both. And I kept sort of going back and forth trying to get the secret from her. And visual artists are just notorious. They will never give you the secret of what they use, what their materials are. And I think she enough of me and stopped returning my emails.
Oh my God.
Writing her back, "Cam, remember me, Charles?"
I promise not to press you about the paper anymore.
I know. I wanted the secret of the paper. She's going to die with that secret.
That's funny.
Now, with the book out now, you're doing a lot of press, and you have your show coming up this fall. So is it good to be back out? Because I know you and Tom Judson were touring with your show before the pandemic, and then everything really shut down. So how was that shutdown period for you, and are you glad to be getting back out?
Well, honestly, I still sort of embarrassed to say, it was kind of marvelous for me. I adored every moment of the pandemic.
Me too.
It was really a magical period. Well, no, I did a lot of stuff. I did about at least 7 Zoom play readings, and it was like the early days of television, where the first ones were very primitive, and then as we went on, we were getting ring lights and using props and costume pieces, and it was that was really fun, and then I wrote I made a movie. It leads me into something I'm really passionate about. My friend Carl Andrus, who's directed most of my plays for the past 25 years. He and I wrote a movie on Skyping during the pandemic, him in Connecticut and me here in New York. And we wrote this movie, and we got it produced, and we shot it in the first year of the pandemic before there was any vaccine. And we had just crazy, stringent COVID protocols, and yet I have to say, we wanted to kill this guy who was our COVID policeman, but he did his job, and not one person of the 80-member cast and crew got sick, and this was really early. So so the movie has kind of languished a bit, but actually it's finally getting a week's theatrical distribution here in New York City, starting September 22nd through the 29th at a new movie theater called the Look Cinema on West 57th Street. And it's one of these new theaters where you can get like a 3-course meal while you're watching your movie. And anyway, so they're showing our film. It's called The Sixth Reel, and it's a kind of a wacky caper movie. It's set today, but it's like those movies from the '60s where you can have a bunch of kooky characters. They're all scrambling to get to steal this one thing, and And so, yes, we have a great cast. Tim Daly is my leading man, from Wings, and Margaret Cho and Julie Halston. And because of the pandemic and all the Broadway shows being closed, we were able to get all these people who wouldn't otherwise be available.
Right.
I think we had half the cast from Hadestown were in our movie.
Oh, wow. That's awesome.
Yeah, no, so I'm excited about it. So I hope people will go see the movie for this 1 week in New York, because maybe that'll lead us to. And immediately after that it goes. It's going to be streaming, I think, like through Amazon or however those things work.
You're very up on all the latest technology, Charles.
Oh, thank you. I was trying to impress you.
Well, I am very impressed because you set a goal to become a leading lady. You have become a leading lady. You have had great successes, but the most important thing is that you keep working. You keep going.
I'm resilient. I'm very resilient, and then I thought with this we were doing this play called the Confession of Lily Dare just before the pandemic, and we were very lucky that the engagement ended a week before the shutdown, so we could actually close the play in a nice way. And I was thinking that might just be my farewell to the stage, but I don't know. I don't have any hobbies.
I don't see you leaving the stage. You're not the kind of person that's just going to be like, and I'm done. I think you're always going to be working.
I always get some new idea, some new fantasy that, and I've been I've had such a really fortunate career in that my creative life is very much based on certain fantasies of who I'd like to play, and I've worked really hard. But I'm in the position that I can get a play put on by nonprofit theater and do it and in some cases get a movie made. But I work very small with friends and I'm never really in a position. I've worked hard not to be in a position where there are all sorts of corporate people telling me, looking over my shoulder, you can't do this, you got to do this, and so.
I love how humble you are, Charles. You're like, I work with my friends. It just so happens you are a very well-connected individual. Your friends are pretty fucking awesome.
I guess so. What was it? My friend Carl said, the one time there was some friend of his who he wanted me to meet, and he said, and she's so funny, and I met her, and I didn't think she was so funny, and and Carl said, "Oh, you don't think anyone's funny?" I said, "No, that's not true. I have friends who are really funny, Bruce Valanche and Joan Rivers."
Right.
He said that I was like a laugh snob. Yeah, I am.
Maybe you
Yeah,
are.
I am.
When you have friends
A
like
laugh
that,
snob.
you have high standards.
They're funny.
Yes.
And Paul Rudnick is a friend of mine. He's really funny.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the thing is when like next level funny people, then yes, somebody who is amusing at a cocktail party is just not on that level. It's just
But
not
then
possible.
the other thing too is sometimes there are people who just who you're with that you just can't you can't really be funny with. Because I think I'm pretty amusing, and but Liz Minnelli. I've met her a number of times, and she evidently just loves to laugh, and she's a great laugher. But I think I'm a bit intimidated, perhaps, and somehow I'm just not remotely funny. I'm just very sincere when I've been with her the few times with my encounters, and I keep thinking, oh, gee, if I could just loosen up, and make her laugh. But I don't know. So I think there are people probably with me who are really funny, but maybe I don't know. I intimidate them because I'm a professional comedy person, and so I don't bring out the best in them.
In your book, I really liked your encounter with Debbie Reynolds. In your book, you have quite an adventure with classic ladies from MGM, including a delicious bit about Esther Williams, which people could read the book to get. But what I was fascinated about with Debbie Reynolds is I really feel like you got to see the side of her that is much closer to what Carrie Fisher was like in public, but that Debbie was more reserved in her public persona of wanting to be a dignified classic movie star. But behind the scenes, she had quite a sense of humor and was kooky.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I just really met her basically that one time. The situation was just that I had a friend who was an executive at Turner Home Video, and there was a big video convention in Las Vegas, and he was able to somehow, get me, a plane ticket and everything to attend as his friend. And the first day that I arrived, and we were at the Desert Inn, there was a cocktail party to welcome all these great MGM ladies who were there, just kind of what's representing their films that were on home video, and so it was Ann Miller, June Allison, Debbie Reynolds, and Esther Williams, and it was just wonderful being a fly on the wall watching them, and we ended up at dinner, and it was just so funny how they were in a way so true to their screen personas, and they were old dear friends with each other. And it was sort of funny that Ann Miller was kind of like a Texas waitress, kind of, she'd go around and take our orders to give to the waitress. And then, June Allison was just all kind of slightly dizzy and vague and yet quite canny. And Esther Williams was very, very smart and and tough. But Debbie Reynolds was, oh my God, she was about 12 women in one, and she was just, she was a consummate performer. And so she would put the napkin over her arm and suddenly be the French waiter, and then she'd be Zsa Zsa, and then but then suddenly she'd drop it all, and she would be this very kind of hard-nosed businesswoman, and she was giving advice to all of these friends of hers, these ladies, about they all had memoirs that were coming out, and but they were all slightly incompetent, and she was explaining how important it was to start getting booked with seniors groups, and she was that you have to be at the factory wherever the books are delivered to get on the trucks, you have to be there. And she was fascinating, but just very she knew her way around show business, and she'd been, I think, screwed so many times by people that she really was trying to be on top of it. Yeah, fascinating.
Yes. Well, Charles, you are fascinating as well. This book is a fascinating deep dive into your life, both personal and professional. And as always, it's a delight to have you on the show, and I appreciate you spending your time with us. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you. I always have so much fun with you, too. Thank you for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Our pleasure.
You bet. And I hope everyone checks out Charles Busch's new memoir, Leading Lady, a memoir of a most unusual boy. It is available now everywhere fine books are sold, and you get more information on his website, charlesbusch.com. That's Busch. And you can see his lovely Marlene Dietrich-esque photo on there and enjoy that. I did enjoy that myself, Charles.
It's a beautiful cover. I have to say, Ben Bella, the publishing company, just did a gorgeous job with the book, and 24 full-color photos inside. I mean, it's really beautiful.
Well, I hope everyone picks it up. And Charles, I appreciate your time. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you.
Can't get enough of the show? Follow them on Twitter at DNR Show or like them on Facebook.
And don't forget to tell your friends to subscribe to DNR 2.0 at DerekandRomaine.com.